it is a chance to connect with people in the physical, and you could have exchanges for 2 years with the same person online that you meet at Stand in the Park and have a more fulfilling energy exchange in an hour than you've had in the last 2 years. I mean, we need to connect in the physical, and that's why they've introduced these moronic laws of 1.5 meters apart and don't talk to each other when you see each other in the shops, and they're trying to break these physical connections because they are the elixir of life.
You want a break, don't you? At some point, I do, and that's what this is founded on. I really do believe that, and I think just the whole way that we live, the way the world is set up, and that's where the control comes in. Because ultimately, when you kind of break down every fear, always at the root of it is this fear of annihilation, this fear of not being here anymore.
That we've lost it. It's up to us. There's no, the cops aren't coming along to save us. Waving a flag, walking around in a circle is not going to save us. This politician that we've banked on is not going to fucking save us, because we're much more than this. We're much more than this. Much more than this.
Welcome to Mind the Shift. I am Anders Bolling. It is turbulent out there. The world is not as poor and as violent as it used to be, perhaps, but as the world has shrunk and as information has exploded and as humanity has become more integrated, at least in theory, things have become a bit messy. Since about a year and a half ago, as you all know, the primary reason for this turbulence is, of course, the pandemic and the policies around it. Millions of people are protesting against lockdowns and mandates, and many of the protests aren't even reported on by the ordinary, normal mainstream news outlets. Millions of others disagree strongly with those that takes to the streets also. And there is also a growing division between different parts of society on other health issues, on jobs, the justice system, and the environment, just to mention a couple of examples. Welcome to the program, Brady Gunn and Sophia Rose.
Thanks.
Thanks for having us.
You are the people behind the movement called A Stand in the Park. Every Sunday, you invite people to just stand in a park to, as it says on the website, celebrate freedom, diversity, and fairness for all. Now, why did you start this, and how did this movement start? What was it?
Well,
it was you, Brady, who started it.
Yeah, I started in Sydney in, I think it was August 2020. I was going to sort of the protests in Sydney at that time and saw a space for a stand. It was not a protest, it was a stand. And at that time, that a lot of us were being targeted for organising things, and protests themselves were being targeted. So it was because it was consistent. It was every Sunday at 10 a.m. There was no organisers, and so we couldn't be targeted, and there would be no signs as such. We'd just wear yellow in unity. Because it was consistent, it would be a good meeting point for people if the internet went down, or if anybody needed any help outside of the net, then they'd know a space in the physical where they could meet up. And it was really important for me to be sort of connecting in the physical. I think we can spin our wheels online quite easily, but connecting in the physical and having that physical energy exchange was really important. And so I had a whole idea of what this thing could be and what it might become. And I didn't have the luxury of getting ahead of myself. I was just sort of standing in my truth at the time. I hadn't
you really were alone at the start, and for how long were you? Just you?
Oh, nearly 3 months. I stood there every Sunday, drive an hour in and stand in Hyde Park.
So how did people react to that when they saw you standing there?
Oh, they probably thought I was mad.
Yeah.
I was joking the other day, though. I said, to be fair, I don't really have any friends anyway. I just used to go into the park every Sunday before that and just wave at people and see if they might be my friends. There's no real difference. No, I went in there but I was making, and you watch all of those older videos, and I said it, I was making a stand for myself. And if any time I thought, am I fucking mad here? Then the answer was very quick, who cares? At least I'm moving my body, I'm standing in my truth. I'm drawing my line in the sand. I'm using my body. It doesn't matter. Nothing else mattered. And I think that's probably what eventually resonated. And that's what we've always sort of talked about and called ourselves, is that the protest about nothing, because we're just standing there for personal truth and freedom, and we've all got our different personal truths and experiences have led us to different people that we're standing next to. Then we stand together, united in each other's personal truths. And even if someone completely disagrees with me, but who was standing in that park at any stage for my freedom, then I'm standing for theirs. We're brothers and sisters. And I think that's the big thing that we've lost here, is that that connection in the physical and understanding of each other, no matter what. I mean, how did we get so secularized and separated? It's crazy.
Yeah. Well, that sounds really nice. I mean, that's really something that is lacking, as you say, because it's so polarized out there. But what is the purpose then? I mean, you, Sophia, you have spoken beforehand here about a multi-purpose for this. If you can say something about that, Sophia. Let's introduce you, Sophia, as well, and you can just tell briefly how you entered this whole adventure.
Yeah, sure. Well, it's all Brady's fault as usual. So Brady and I knew each other years ago. We met travelling and had mad adventures in India and Pakistan, and we kind of lost contact a bit in the last few years. And then obviously this all kicked off, and I saw that Brady was very out there with calling this out. I was like, oh, thank God, it's another one of us. Because at that point, it was, you didn't know who was seeing through this and who wasn't. It was quite a scary time. So I got in contact with Brady, and he just sort of mentioned it almost in passing. Oh, I've been doing this thing, a stand in the park. I had no idea that it had spread all across Australia. It was into New Zealand, Canada at that point. But he suggested.
So when was that? When? At what point was that?
This was well, we got in contact. I think it was December. It was nearly a year ago. And then I got things going in the February. So yes, Brady just suggested that I get a stand going. I was like, yeah, okay. And then it kind of evolved into well, kind of getting it going in the UK. And so I just set up a Facebook group for the UK, got the word out across different freedom groups and various outlets, and it just exploded in the UK. It became huge from day one. It just kept growing and growing and growing. And now we've got, I need to do another count because there are so many. It's a real task, but it's well over 700 parks participating in the UK.
700 only in the UK? Oh, that's a lot.
Just in the UK, yeah. And it's still growing. We're still getting new stands forming every week. It really took off. It was just the right thing at the right time for people. We were very much feeling divided, separated, unsure of what was going on. How do we find our tribe, the people that could see what was happening here? It was just, that was my passion, was to make that stand, because at that point we were in lockdown. And so actually going to a park and standing there was technically, illegal.
Yeah.
Even though, it's the legislature there's nothing legal there, but still, it was a revolutionary act to actually stand in a park with other people and not be pretending to exercise and do stuff, and just say, right, I'm here, I'm not moving, this is my human right. Like Brady says, it's all about your personal truth. So we were all coming with different motivators for being there, but ultimately it was that we're standing for freedom. And that's kind of underpinned the whole thing ever since. And that's what allows it to be so inclusive, so diverse. Because freedom is just, it's the ultimate goal for most of us.
So it's not a protest in the classical sense, but it seems like, I mean, on a basic level here, it was a protest against the lockdowns anyway, because you were, I mean, physically violating the rules around the lockdowns. So that was a...
It was an act of defiance, I would say. So it wasn't something really out there. We weren't ranting and raving and making a big scene. It was literally, you know, like Brady was doing for those 3 months, just standing.
Yeah.
Just standing, very peaceful, with our intentions set, because it was quite nerve-wracking. People were very nervous about the police presence, and you know, most of us have never had any interactions with the police. Suddenly,
so the police were there. They were there watching you, or
yeah. The police knew. They would come along. It was at my own stand, we never had much trouble. The police would try and move us on and try and kind of split us up, but it never really came to much. I think also just because the stand, you know, the actual stand, it's just for an hour. So, I mean, they go on much longer because it's very much like a social thing as well, and there's a lot going on. But, you know, there's not much within an hour that the police could really do. So we were just very much, right, we're not moving. And then it's 11 o'clock. We've made our stand.
Okay. So between 10 and 11 every Sunday, you stand.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it's a very difficult thing to shut down. And that was sort of initially part of the plan. I didn't realise quite how into fruition it would come. But trying to, for the police to arrest a bunch of old ladies armed with Pomeranians and some toddlers wielding fucking baby chinos with smiley face T-shirts on. I mean, you cannot shut that down. And we've had cops really hassling people a lot here in Australia, but eventually a lot of them are walking around in twos and then doing tag team and walking with the other twos, and you just cannot shut this thing down. It's just impossible to shut down. And a stand in the park it just keeps going. No matter what the target, you cannot shut it down. It's great to watch. It's brilliant.
Yeah, it sounds really sympathetic, or whatever the word is. But so you said 700 parks in the UK alone, and I guess a lot of parks in Australia as well, because that's where it started. And how big is it now in total? I mean, globally, how many countries have joined this? So, and how many people are doing this?
I think it's about 30 countries now, isn't it, Fifi?
I think, yeah.
30 countries.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
And so, how many venues? How many parks?
I don't know. I don't.
It's over 1,000 parks, and like I said, we need to do a recount, which is a mammoth undertaking now, because there are so many. But yeah, it's over 1,000. It's quite a bit over 1,000 parks all around the world.
Yeah, I don't think we have it here in Sweden as yet.
No, not yet. You could be the first, Andy.
I could be the first. Yes, sure. Yeah. On the other hand, Sweden is a country that hasn't been very. I mean, we haven't had a complete lockdown, so it's a little bit different here, perhaps, than in many other countries. I don't know. Maybe the need is not that big here, but I mean, the need to stand for your freedom is ever present, of course.
I'll put $50 on it that one day there will be a stand in the park in Sweden.
Yeah, I wouldn't bet. I wouldn't bet against. I'm sure you're right. So,
look, and if anything, it's extremely fulfilling. So while it isn't a protest, it is a chance to connect with people in the physical, and you could have exchanges for 2 years with the same person online that you meet at stand in the park and have a more fulfilling energy exchange in an hour than you've had in the last 2 years. I mean, we need to connect in the physical, and that's why they've introduced these moronic laws of 1.5 meters apart and don't talk to each other when you see each other in the shops, and they're trying to break these physical connections because they are the elixir of life. Without these energy exchanges, we do shrivel up and die, and is really, really important. Anyone who's ever been to a stand in the park or had similar energy exchanges at any of the protests know exactly what I'm talking about. I mean, you walk away an inch higher. There's something in it. There's something real, very real.
And that's why the trolls on internet don't even want to reveal their names and things like that, because they know that if they show up, I mean, especially in person, like I say, if you meet in the physical, you can't have that kind of polarization. It's almost impossible. So sorry.
Oh,
no, okay, go ahead, Brady. Sorry, go ahead.
See, in the physical, it's not quite so hard.
I know.
No, I was going to say, and it's put a big target on my back. I was arrested here in July for various things that have got almost 100%. I was organising the protests here in Sydney, but a stand in the park is probably mobilising more bodies consistently all over the world than many other things. So it's put a big target on my back, and they arrested me for it. They kicked me out of Sydney. I'm not allowed back in Sydney, and so they know that it's a threat. They know this is exactly what they're trying to get us not to do, and a stand in the park is doing it. And they targeted me for it. These cops threw me under the bus for it, and they were instructed from pretty high up, from what I can tell. I did nothing. So,
terrible. Well, so what do you hope to achieve? Do you have a vision of some kind about this? No.
Nah.
It's just something you need to do.
It's very organic. So I've seen, since I started over here, the evolution of the stand. So like I said, initially we were in a lockdown situation, so it's very much the energy was fight. We've got to show that we're not going to go along with these insane rules. And it was very much about being there and making the stand, and just meeting kindred spirits, to have that kind of support system, because so many people were falling out with family and friends, who had completely different perspectives on what was happening. And then a bit further down the line, people were saying, and it happened collectively, we need to be doing more. What else can we do? And so people started really coming together to build their community, because, we don't know what's going to happen, if we are going to be ostracized. People are growing food together. We've got food banks. We've got, kind of emergency contingency plans in place. People have really, really bonded. They're also taking action outside of the stands, so they're really kind of getting out there and spreading the word, doing outreach. So when I said to you before about it being multifunctional, that's kind of what I mean. You can use it for, for some people it will just be more of a social, it's kind of that comfort blanket. I can come here once a week. And obviously in between, people are meeting up outside of the stands. And that's kind of as far as it will go for them. But for others, they're getting seriously organised, which I suspect isn't going down too well with the powers that should not be. Hence, Brady having that target on his back, because people are, they're massively empowered by coming together like that. So people who were really quaking, in the beginning, like, my God, the police, and this is,
we're so conditioned to be frightened by these powers out there.
And the fear is diminishing every time. I've seen people at my own stand just blossom. They're really flourishing, and they've found this strength that they never realised they had. People that had never been to a protest in their life, and now they're with their flags and at the front of protests. So it's beautiful. It really is.
But can you tell us a little bit about the people who have joined? What do they say about this, and who are they? What kind of people do you have there in the parks?
It's everyone, isn't it? It's kind of a mixture of everyone. Like Brady was saying, people have got all kinds of different views on things and opinions, and they're coming from all different kinds of places. But ultimately, like, you could have all those fallings out online really easily, nitpicking a slight difference in opinion, but in the flesh, it just melts away, because ultimately people just want to have that physical connection. And like I said, it's freedom underpinning all of this, and that overrides much of any other kind of superficial differences. That's the motivator for people to come together. We want to be free. So it's really, we've got all ages, all political persuasions, sexualities, and every kind of tick box is there. But people just want to come together. I think it's the same in ours, isn't it, Brady?
Yeah, you could not throw a net over that cross section. It just does not exist.
Okay, that's
and in answer to your previous question, I don't think Standard Park belongs to anyone. A lot of people have said to me, "Thank you so much for starting this, and you must be so proud," and rah rah rah. And I don't take any credit for it. All I did was stand in my truth.
Yeah.
My truth stood in that park. I didn't fucking stand there. My truth did. And anybody who's ever stood in any park ever since is standing in their truth. And all of our truths look different. For some people, standing in a park is just as scary as another person running for president. All of our experiences have been different. They've all led us to a different experience in this moment. And so I take no credit for what I did other than standing in my truth, which I take full credit for. But it's not me to come up with a direction for standing in the park. It's not me to talk for anybody else. It's not. Everybody who's standing there has their own truth, and it's up to them to do what Fifi just mentioned. They're either take mega action or no action. It doesn't matter. It belongs to no one, and so me neither, nor Fifi, nor no one. We're not leading this. We're not guiding this, and I think that's the only thing that sort of resonated. If I had have tried to lead it, if I had have tried to make it about me, or Fifi had have done as well, then we would have lost it. This is empowering, not this is people stepping into their own power. When they're stepping into that park, they're stepping into their own power. We're not giving it to them. That doesn't work. And they truly are. This is, like Fifi said, this is light. This lights people up. This is the Great Awakening. But people have to step into their own Great Awakening. It's not up to you, Anders, doing this amazing podcast, or me doing that, or Fifi, or anyone, to give that to anyone. You can only lead someone to the edge of the moment, but they've got to jump into that moment themselves. And the more you try to guide them, the more they're trying to the more you lose them.
Awakening is an interesting word here. We're going to get back to those bigger issues and the bigger picture here, of course. But in a way, it sounds like as if it is about people realizing the power that they have that they've had within them all along, but never realized. But would you say that it's very beautiful, all that you describe about this, that it is something, it's not really a protest, it's about standing for your truth. But would it be fair to say that it started as something that, I mean, that the policies around the pandemic was the big problem from the start here, and then as time has passed, it has grown, and you've seen a bigger problem, a bigger scheme here.
No, I saw that then. Obviously, that was the catalyst, but everything's a reflection, and so all of my problems in my life before that led me to all of those problems were just a reflection of my internal problems. And until we go into the pain, then we can't reflect properly. And the world has been in pain for a very long time. And here's the fucking ugly reflection. You don't get this much of a disgusting, putrid energy reflection from such high sources without losing yourself first. If all of us had been in our bigger space before this, then this would never have happened. This is only a reflection. And so I knew that early in the piece, but certainly the catalyst. And it's great. What you think is your nemesis is actually your superpower. And this has led a lot of people to find big parts of themselves that they never would have found themselves before. Human beings don't make life hard for themselves. We don't step out from our comfy lounge, from in front of our flat screen, and step outside and make life hard for themselves, which is where we learn about ourselves. We just don't do it. We have to find ourselves in hardship. And here's the crowbar. Here's the lever that's forced us into actually taking a good, long, hard look at ourselves as people and as a society. So it's brilliant. It had to happen like this. It couldn't have happened any other way. And we're safe in it. We're safe in it. But as long as we're in our truth.
How has the police reacted? I mean, how do they see it now? They were suspicious at the beginning, but is it the same now, or have they gotten used to you being there? All these people standing in the parks and
from the UK to Australia, because Australia is really under the cosh at the moment in the UK.
Yes, I have read about that.
Being left alone because we haven't got those restrictions in place. We had it very heavy before, and now we're in that limbo period again. We've got all the threats of what's to come, and it's kind of like we're waiting for the axe to fall. But I know in Australia, and obviously they have when Brady comes back, he can explain.
Yes, we lost him here, but he's probably has some technical problems. Yeah,
but obviously they've got different laws and legislation for different states. It's kind of set up differently out there, whereas the UK, it tends to be a kind of blanket rule for things. So we did go through a period where the police were turning up. They obviously had the list of the parks that were participating, and they were turning up there ready to kind of accost people as they approached. They were looking out for people in yellow, and it was quite intense for a good few weeks. There were a couple of arrests. But as I said before, on the whole, there really wasn't much the police could do. And also I did sense a kind of reticence, because we're such a peaceful, friendly bunch, just standing, having a cup of coffee, talking, every age, with the grandmothers, with the little dogs. And I think for some of the police, with a shred of humanity, were very relaxed.
Yeah, they're also human beings. I mean, the policemen are also human beings. They can also feel things, of course, if they dare to step out of that the matrix that they're in.
Exactly. So we didn't actually have that much trouble, all things considered. But I do think that is to do with the energy as well. That we're putting out. They're picking up on that, even if they're completely unconscious of it. It will be influencing their reactions to us. So we were never hostile, really, with the police. We would just either kind of ignore them, or some people would engage and have some healthy conversation. But I know it was much harder recently in Australia, and
maybe we can hear Brady tell us about that when he comes back. He's still away from the internet here. We just lost him, but I'm sure he's working on getting back in again. But in the meantime, we can speak a little bit about some other things, you and I, Sophia here. You mentioned that you are all dressed in yellow when you stand there in the park. Why is that? Why did you choose that color? I think it was Brady who chose it.
Yeah, I mean, I think speaking for Brady here, it was all about visibility. I mean, yellow is very, you don't.
It's not very. It's not a political color. Also, it's. I mean,
it's. I mean,
neutral.
Some people will, any color that you pick, they'll say, "Oh, well, that represents this," or that you can't escape it. But for me, it really resonated because I don't know if you're aware of the chakra system and the it's so yellow is the solar plexus, which is the place of power and kind of personal power. So I thought that really, it couldn't be more perfect to use that color. Not everybody it's certainly not a stipulation that you must wear yellow. It's just something it's alerts people to our presence, so they know where to find us. And also, you just feel like you're in unity, wearing that color all together.
Okay. You haven't considered moving these stands out into the streets where people are rallying?
Not the stands themselves, but I'm literally just launching outreach programs at the end of this week, which is about taking the word to the streets. What we're finding is happening now is the polarization is kind of decreasing between the opposing sides. So we've had people that have gone along and gone along and gone along with the entire narrative up until now. And with the advent of, oh, here he is, he's coming back. With the advent of the passports being rolled out here, that's been a big wake-up call for a lot of people. So we've got
the vaccine passports.
Yes. Yeah, so we've got a lot of people now who have they're double jabbed, you know, they've gone along with everything, and this has made them stop and say, hang on a minute, producing your papers to get into somewhere, whoa, this is something very reminiscent of recent history.
Yes, and also what's happening in China, and the Western leaders have been criticizing China for so long for controlling their people and their population, and now it seems as if it's about the same thing happening here. Yeah,
exactly. So that's kind of alerted a lot of people to why this is taking a direction that, hang on a second. So with regards to that kind of outreach and taking things to the streets, it's to start engaging in those conversations with people who are very concerned about what's happening. They are starting to ask the questions, and the stands are a perfect place for someone to come along, because it doesn't matter what level you're at. You know, you're not expected to be some full-on conspiracy theorist that went down the rabbit hole 30 years ago. You know, everyone is welcome. And we've had many people coming to stands who literally have had no idea whatsoever about any of the agenda that we've seen rolling out, many of us, for many years before this actually kicked off. So yeah, it's there are lots of people now who have kind of they've got feet in both camps, but they're you know, they're starting to question. The cogs are turning. They're thinking, wow, this is speeding up very quickly, and they're starting to get savvy to, you know, the social credit system that is obviously that's kind of what this is about, really, in the end.
That's what they call it in China.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Brady, welcome back. We were talking a little bit before here about how the police have acted, not just from the beginning when you started this, but I mean, more recently. And we understand that in Australia, it's been a bit harsher and tougher than maybe in the UK and other countries. So how has it been?
Yeah, potentially. I think we seem to go through phases. So every winter it follows a cycle. So last winter we were looking at Europe and thinking, oh, poor you guys, you're really copying it. And you guys have been looking at us this winter and thinking, wow, that's really escalated there. And we're about to do the same thing back to you. And so I don't know if the cop cycle follows that, but yeah, some of the treatment from the police here has been just really, really bad. And they've done irreparable, I think it's irreparable damage. I mean, these are fellow Australians who've done some very, very, very bad things to very innocent people, and I don't think the Australian public is sort of going to very easily forgive them. It's so sad. It's really sad.
And does that also go for the politicians, the leaders in general? The people they're losing trust in them.
Well, yeah, it's so funny to watch these people who are now placing unconditional trust in these fucking psychopaths and placing their kids in their hands. But you could still ask them today, do you trust politicians? And they'd say no.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just, this is mass hypnosis. This is mass psychosis. It's the biggest number that's been done on anyone ever, let alone this amount of people. It's so crazy. And so I don't think anyone ever really trusted politicians. And so for some of us, we've woken up and now sort of seen the real depth of it. But for the others, they still don't trust them, but they're still just placing absolutely blind, unconditional faith in these people. And their kids. It's very odd to watch, but I think these guys are panicking, and to me that's sort of almost the scariest thing of all, because there's some very big powers implementing this shit, and the more people wake up, the more they're going to realise that. I mean, these guys are all in on this. They are at no stage going to turn around and say, "Okay, we're sorry. Here's the world back. We didn't mean
our
it.
bad.
Off you go."
Yeah.
It's just not going to happen. I mean,
that's not going to happen. No, but perhaps in the best scenario, it's just going to dissipate in a way, and they're going to.
I don't see that.
Leave the stage. No, but the worst case scenario, I guess, is violence. It doesn't have to go down that path, I think.
Oh, the worst case scenario is us watching billions of people die, and my money. I hope that doesn't happen, but my money, the smart money, would be putting your money on that. It's way worse than anybody thinks. Way worse, according to my humble calculations, and I hope I'm wrong. But I think it can be a bit of a trap for people to fall into this positive thinking side of this, because it's even worse than their worst nightmare.
Well,
but I hope I'm wrong.
I hope you're wrong too. And I also think that it's a little bit like the placebo effect. If you think something's going to go down the drain, it certainly will. So
I don't think it's that simple, Anders. I don't think it's that simple.
It's not exactly that simple, but it's part of the thing, part of what's happening, what's going on. I mean, if 8 billion people thinks that things are going to go down the drain, this is going to happen.
But just because you're thinking really doesn't mean you're
because
thinking
what's
negative.
I mean, but reality is created and shaped by human beings all the time, continuously.
But that doesn't mean you can't be a realist at the same time. So just sticking your fingers in your ears and thinking positively doesn't cut it. I mean,
you have to act, of course, but you can act in a positive way.
It's not that simple, but we'll see. We'll see. I'm a positive. I live in a spiritual space. I live there, but that doesn't mean that you can't factor in all possibilities mathematically, and that factors into that spiritual space in the optimism as well. And just because we watch 2 billion people die doesn't mean that's a bad thing. It just is what it is. And so I think it's a trap for people to fall into hope, when we actually probably need to spend just as much time on hope as actual mathematically what's about to happen. I mean, there's a lot of people jacked up on this fucking shit. They've already done it. And so I would urge people to think positively, but don't stick fingers in ears and heads in sand, because you're going to get hit harder by the Mack truck when it comes. Mm-hmm. But you can still be in a spiritual place to do that. You can still. You can do that. That doesn't mean you're selling yourself out, or you're selling your spirituality.
Follow your inner wisdom, so to speak, and don't follow the leaders.
I think people who are sticking their fingers in their ears, that's coming from a place of fear.
Yeah.
And so
I don't agree.
You don't agree?
No, not really. I mean, ultimately, yes. But there's a lot of people who say that they're not living in fear.
I don't want.
Yeah, but there's a lot of people who would say they're not living in fear, who are doing that.
Yeah, but I think they are. If you can't look at something and go through that, I mean, it's awful, isn't it? To go through that whole process of absolute terror, face it, and come out the other side. I think the people that are kind of, positive thinking, and they don't want to go there, it's not really authentic. Whereas if you face it, like the reality you're saying, we could well be looking at, I mean, come on, I do agree, you've got to be realistic. But if you can look at that and face everything that comes up and get through the other side, then you're able to be like optimistic in a genuine way, because you've accepted, okay, that might happen, it could well happen, but I'm okay. I'm safe.
I agree with that. Sorry. But
I myself, I can say that I feel almost a little bit livened up when I see that there is turbulence and chaos within the political system, for instance. I think it's kind of interesting. And I'm not scared about it. I'm not scared of that. I think, okay, well, things need to happen. So, it's going to be messy for a while.
I'm not scared of 2 billion people dying, even if I'm one of them. The only way to depower something is to let it be there. Why would
2 billion people die? I can't see that really.
Let's not go through that now, but we'll see. We'll meet back here in 2 years, because they've injected themselves with this shit. That's the answer.
I think it's anyway, let's not go there. So
I'll meet you back here. What's the date?
Yeah,
2 years.
2 years from now. Yeah, sure.
And I'm not going to say I told you so. I'm going to cry.
Or we can have this podcast into the next one in another realm when we've both died, perhaps, and live in a different. No, just joking.
We're already there.
we're already there, I know. So before we go spiritual here, I read this article on the Brownstone Institute website the other day, and it had compiled dozens of video clips from rallies and demonstrations around the world. Not these stands, of course, these peaceful stands, beautiful things that you are representing here, but all kinds of demonstrations around the world against lockdowns, against mandates. And it was 25 countries, and there were hundreds of thousands of people. You could see that in the pictures. There were so many people. And the Brownstone Institute concluded that this is the largest global protest movement in decades. I couldn't assess if that's true, but could be, perhaps. So how do you assess, how do you think the mainstream media is covering this?
Well, they're not really, are they? I mean, the latest worldwide rallies have had the most, by far, coverage, which is minuscule, considering it's such a huge thing.
Which one? Sorry.
The recent, so on the 20th, the worldwide rallies, which took place in, I think it was 150 countries altogether, or even more. So there's been a little bit of coverage. I think there's had to be, because it's just too huge to completely ignore. But on the whole, the mainstream media, they're on their track. They won't deviate. And honestly, I think they would still be spouting the same rhetoric, the same rubbish as parliaments were being stormed and politicians dragged out by their hair. They would still be trumpeting the same propaganda. They're never going to, that's what they're there for. So they're not going to suddenly be reporting. I mean, this would be over, really, very, very quickly if the mainstream media actually reported the level of resistance. So many people who are kind of wobbling on the fence, or they just haven't kind of had the backbone to really get out there, they would be so empowered, obviously. So I've got no hope really that we're going to see a big shift in the mainstream media reporting, because they're owned, they're outright owned, they're completely controlled. It's what they were set up for.
I've been there. I've been one of those journalists. I worked for them for the biggest mainstream media newspaper in Sweden for over 20 years. Yeah. So I know that it's not like, they're telling us in the morning what to write and not to write. It's not like that. But I understand what you're saying. I think there is a point to what you're saying. There is a structure. There's a matrix. There are things, unwritten rules, so to speak, that you kind of sense that maybe we shouldn't go there and there. I haven't had problems with that concerning this particular issue, but other issues I've been writing about, the climate change, for instance, and I know a lot about it. And I mean, there are certain things that, maybe we shouldn't write that, So there is a kind of, but I mean, that's also human. And but one thing is very true about what you're saying. I think it's a dance between the leaders and the media all the time. It's a what's the word? Symbiosis, and they don't even see it themselves, I think. But so anyhow, and also I want to ask.
I see them as one and the same.
I beg your pardon?
Oh, I see them as one and the same. Or this conglomeration is the governments and the media and all of the big tech and pharma. They're all they're all coming from the same place. So I don't even know if it's symbiosis as much as it's actually them. This is an all-out sellout. But the beauty of it today is that we're all media. Yeah. This is media. Yeah, everybody has media in the palm of their hand. We have access to all of the information that we could have ever dreamed of from the palm of our hand, and we have the opportunity to broadcast our media at any moment ever to the world instantly. And that if this is an information war, then we're all soldiers, information-wise, through our media. And some of the most powerful journalists of our time have simply held up their phone and reflected what's going on in their world. Yeah, it's extremely important that we continue, and not so much just posting on Facebook memes and facts and all of this shit that we just sort of churn out. It's actually real time reflections of reality of what's happening. That's the most important stuff.
Exactly.
We've all got the opportunity.
I agree totally, and I think that's why this time is so crucial and so important, and so and it's in many respects it's the best time to live ever for humans, and it's also maybe the messiest time in a long time because we're integrating. But okay, so let's go into those big questions a little bit here towards the end here, because you have said, Sophia, at least, maybe you also, Brady, that there is a spiritual battle going on. So what do you mean by that, a spiritual battle?
Well, I think ultimately it's a battle for our souls, really. They want us, lock, stock and barrel. They want, this is why they try to stop us coming together. They don't want people understanding who they really are, the power, innate power that we have. It's all out for them to be, it's 24/7 barrage. They can't rest. And it's all about that control. And it's, we just look at the programming, the degradation really of society. We've all been conditioned to not trust each other, ever more division. We've seen that more than anything in the last few decades is this constant breaking down of groups and the divisions and segregations between people, and encouraging people to just be clashing the whole time because they're not they're one of these people and that's one of those, and it's ever smaller and smaller and smaller. And in the end, it's just this reduction of our humanity. It's just fear. This is what this society is kind of founded on now, is fear of everything, fear of your neighbour, even fear of what could happen, fear. It's just relentless. And I think when you kind of boil it down, it is essentially good and evil in the end. And this has been, in every sacred text through the ages, it's all very consistent that there's a kind of them and us, and this battle, whether you're religious or not, and you don't need to be, it's kind of all there. So
is it about shedding fear and realizing that you have your own power? You're just as powerful as any other human being, to realize that, and that will liberate people? Or
fear is not there. It's over, and we live in a completely different space. Ultimately what's driving this is fear of death, which is absolutely ludicrous when you think it's the only thing we can count on. You're born, you're going to die, and this absolutely crazy avoidance of it's just a given, it's going to happen, and that's what this is all founded on. The irony of people being injected with something that is quite possibly going to take them out of here way, way quicker, to avoid dying. It's just, you couldn't make it up, really. But that's what it is. I think if people did not have this fear of death instilled into them, then what? You can just imagine, can't you? Life would be...
Yeah, and it's ironic how they focus on people dying from COVID-19 when, most of them are elderly people. They are like 80 plus years. And we have been, Sweden has been fairly, the authorities in Sweden have been fairly reasonable. They have talked about it in a way that is not that very conspiratorial, or whatever the word is. But still people are very, concerned that people are dying. Oh, you shouldn't, just because somebody's 80 years old, you shouldn't be, it's just as terrible when somebody who's 80 dies as if somebody who's younger dies. But that's, it doesn't make sense, really. Is it a bigger problem if 85-year-old people die than if 20-year-old people die? Of course it is. I mean, a smaller problem if 85-year-old people die than if 20-year-old people die, because I mean it's obvious. And those who didn't die in Norway, for example, they have compared Sweden with Norway, where almost nobody has died from COVID-19 because they had this lockdown very early on, and the virus almost didn't even enter the country. And I think to myself, and I've said to some friends, it's difficult to say this in public, but I will do now. I mean, these elderly people in Norway that didn't die in 2020, in 2021, they're going to die in 2022 or 2023. Surprise! No. I mean, we're all going to die, and it's just a delay of a couple of years. In every country, this is so. It's the whole thing is a little bit ridiculous, just as you say, because of fear of death.
It's an obsession with death. It's a sickness, really. Death has been kind of demonized as the worst thing that could ever happen. It's horrifying. It's probably actually the best thing, to be honest. Who want to be here forever? I mean, come on. You want a break, don't you? At some point, I do. And that's what this is founded on. I really do believe that. And I think just the whole way that we live, the way the world is set up, and that's where the control comes in, because ultimately, when you kind of break down every fear, always at the root of it is this fear of annihilation, this fear of not being here anymore. And things have gone really crazy when you've got people, like you say, going up in arms about somebody who's had a full life and they've lived way longer than somebody would have done, 100 years ago or even less. They've 90 years old, but this huge outcry, and we must protect at the expense of all else. But there is no logic. It's this primal kind of fear that's been instilled.
Yeah. And it's a lot easier to control the people that is scared than
absolutely this
people
whole
that is liberated. So what about this time in history now then? I mean, one of the tenets of this podcast, I always say, is that we are integrating for the first time in human history. As far as we know, there might have been civilizations before that have that we don't know about, but or that we have forgotten about. But as far as we know, this is the first time in recorded history that the whole globe is integrating. So we know, in real time what is happening on the other side of the planet and all that, and that does things to us. This is one of the tenets of this podcast. So do you also think that this is a crucial time in history? This is a pivotal point in history for us.
Brady, you take this one.
Of course. And going back to your previous question, which feeds into this question, is that we've only got ourselves to blame for this. This is a spiritual war, which it is. Then if we are whole, full spiritual beings who are in our power, then this wouldn't be happening. It's only because we've had the spirituality and nature and connection and community beaten out of us that can make this possible. And so, this is a massive spiritual war. And if we think that fucking competing with each other about who's got the bigger flat screen, or selling ourselves out for a very cheap partner or cheap interaction, or taking the easy identity rather than doing the hard yards is going to buy us a full life, then we're kidding ourselves. We've been told that we can just buy this off the shelf, but we can't. We have to go through a hell of a lot of pain. We have to go through a hell of a lot of spiritual and emotional discovery and a hell of a lot of responsibility taking for ourselves and each other to get to a full, whole spiritual being. And because we're not, this has happened. And fair enough, we've had a number done on us. But it's true, and that's why so this is only a reflection, and so unless we step into our personal power and take responsibility for ourselves and our pain and each other, and step into the bigger space where we're not pinging around in this petty bullshit, and we can see the world and each other and ourselves for what we are, then we are not in our power. People power is nothing. These motherfuckers don't give a shit about us walking around in circles waving a flag. They don't care. If anything, they're surprised that there's not more of us and we didn't do it sooner. They don't care. But people who are in their power, people power is nothing without people who are in their power. And so when there's intention of these people standing in parks and walking around with signs and flags, and they've drawn their line in their sand energetically and spiritually, and they've found their true self with each other, then there's people power. You're better off 6 people standing there who are fucking staunch in their shit rather than 6 million people who are going to get blown over at the first zephyr, because that means nothing. And so we need to step in. The Great Awakening is us. This is only a reflection. So the Great Awakening comes down to us standing in our emotional responsibility, our spiritual growth, each other's understanding, stepping into our power together and letting go into the Great Awakening, or it's nothing. The world is only a reflection. So if we take 100% personal responsibility, we don't have to worry about anything else. The action takes itself. But that's a very, 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 very big trust fall for people to take, because you're letting go of almost everything that we've known and everything that we've built our identity off, and all of our pain. And we hold our pain so dearly. That's why people are so scared of death, because that nullifies and voids what they think their pain is. Yeah. And we hold it, we form our identity out of our pain. I mean, not taking away from sort of some people who've had some really bad things happen to them, but you could mention to someone that that something really bad has happened to you, like, well, you're just going to have to get over yourself. And you watch their reaction. How fucking dare you? I was raped or whatever, like big shit. I'm not taking away from it, but we hold our pain so dearly. And I did it for 40 years, but it was only when I found my spiritual and emotional responsibility and stepped into that and deprogrammed my shit by letting it be there, that I found the space to do anything. And if everybody did that, then none of this would be happening. It would dissolve itself. It's only because we've lost that we've lost it. It's up to us. There's no, the cops aren't coming along to save us. Waving a flag, walking around in a circle is not going to save us. This politician that we've banked on is not going to fucking save us. Nothing's going to save us. Only our bigger space where we know we're safe, because we're much more than this. We're much more than this. Much more than this.
So can you sense that spiritual awakening within these groups of people that are standing in the parks now today, or that's not something that you're talking about, or are you?
Yeah, it's happening. It's happening. It's that empowerment. You can see it in the people that are really embodying it. It's a massive change. It's a real shift, and it's something it's not easy to define. That kind of just knowing that you are, that there's no authority over you from another human being, that there are much, much higher powers, however it is you see it. When you're really connected to that, and it's a knowing, and it's something that you just embody. And I'm not saying that you will never experience fear again. It is a kind of process, but you will always come back to that, and it's so much easier to, like, you feel the fear, oh, okay, it's here, and you can let it go. You're not getting stuck in it, and people pick up on it. It's very, very powerful, and it does. It's people catch it. That's like a virus, actually. People catch that, and it grows. A good virus. This is what they do not want, absolutely. And the way to make sure people don't step into that space, even though I think it's inevitable, there is this great awakening happening, however you want to call it. It keeps people in fear, and they're ramping it up, because that's really the only thing that keeps people enclosed, and it stops them being open to kind of experiencing their true self.
Yeah, and it can only happen in the physical. We do need to walk around in circles waving flags. We do need to be in the park. But then what? Then what? And it can only happen in the physical. We could spin our wheels online forever, and you just do not get the energy exchange. It just doesn't even exist. Whereas in the physical, it's life itself.
Yeah, it's more intimate, and you can feel that it's there. Yeah, it's real.
We need it. I mean, I think it was Hitler did that experiment. They had sort of 40 babies or whatever in one room that were born on one day, and 40 babies in another room that were born on the same day, and they fed them both the same things, but that room of babies was held.
Yeah.
but that room of babies wasn't even touched. And I think most of those babies that just weren't touched from birth died because we just need energy exchange. We need physical energy exchanges, and that's what's kind of broken us. Is we've broken community, we've broken true energy exchange, and so that's what will fix us. And that's where spiritual empowerment has to come from. Is each other. We're all one. We're not connected. We're one. We're all drops of the same ocean. And so we need to unite and reform to be powerful as one. But we've been dissected, disconnected on purpose, from what I can tell. But it's worked.
Yeah. So I sense that you have slightly different views on whether to be optimistic or pessimistic about what's going on and what's going to happen here. So, do you think that this spiritual awakening is happening? Is it going in a good direction or not? And if it is going in a good direction, how is it going to come about? I don't know who wants to begin answering this.
Well, there's no such thing as good and bad for a start, and so of course it's the Great Awakening. This is how it had to happen, and even if old pessimistic Braids over here, the sad sack is right, and a lot of people die, that's not necessarily a bad thing. I mean,
everything's neutral.
Well, it has to be, but that doesn't mean that you're not that doesn't mean that you're not invested. That doesn't mean that you're not having the most potent experience possible. It just means that you're choosing what you're investing in, and you're non-judgmental. And so you could be for most people, we could be a far more powerful person by staying out of right and wrong and yes and no and judgment and who's who and what's what, by just staying in our truth where our intuition is running the show, and have a much more potent experience with ourselves, with each other, and with the world by doing that, rather than trying to invest in every single little thing and getting caught up and our head blows off our own shoulders because of how wrong it is and how right it should be and what we could do and what we should have done. And if only that hadn't have happened, it wouldn't. This whole hamster wheel just spins around till smoke comes off it. If you can step out of that perpetual hamster wheel and stop trading in the currency of thoughts and words and stop labeling everything and giving everything meaning and footholds and just churning around in what I just said, and just be in your power, just start trading in the currency of energy. It's a big trust fall to take, and it's a totally different energy to live in. But that's where the answers are, and that's what the Great Awakening is. So yeah, this is a mega spiritual awakening, but a lot of people aren't going to find it. It's just too much responsibility to take. But the people coming out the other side is peace and freedom. But they're the ones that would have found peace and freedom already. Peace and freedom that we're looking for in the physical lives in ourselves. If we find peace and freedom for ourselves, then the world reflects that.
What do you say about this, Sophia? Fifi?
I think we are actually ultimately in agreement. Obviously, we'll have like different sort of personal approaches to things, but yeah, I mean, it's the middle path, isn't it? There's good and bad are only definitions that human beings have come up with in this sort of so-called physical reality. Ultimately, everything is just unfolding the way it's unfolding. There's nothing actually right or wrong. When you're taking that much broader perspective, for me, it's like being in a movie. It's like a big cosmic game. We're here for a limited amount of time, and we have to be fully invested in it in order for it to be worth playing. Like we go through, it's a real roller coaster. Who wants to go and watch a film where it's just a beige screen?
Yeah.
So I think that's kind of what this is.
It's a stage play, but it's a very interesting stage play.
It really is. Like when you can kind of step back, and okay, this comes from having gone through the fear. I mean, that's intensely destabilizing. Most people don't want to go there because it's huge. But when you can, that whatever happens, you, and not just this body, this identity, but the absolute essence that's always been, always will be, is fine. There's nothing to fear. You can watch things unfold. It doesn't mean that you won't be involved. We still have our role to play. So for me and Brady, it's a stand in the park, and everything that encompasses. That's kind of what we're here for. It doesn't mean everything stops, but you've got that much broader perspective where you can just stop and go, okay, I'm not going to take things quite so seriously, because that's always founded in this belief that we're this body, we're this personality. That's where the fear of death comes from. This annihilation, this loss of what we believe we are. We are way, 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 way more than that. So I think we are creating our own reality. It is like a kind of virtual reality game sort of thing, and we definitely create, so you can choose what your focus will go on. So it is very powerful to see things as being all okay in the end. We don't have total control over it though, so you will always have to move through that fear and get to that state of acceptance. Like Brady says, 2 billion, 5 billion, 10 billion people dead, it's okay, which sounds really, it's a bit of a weird stance to take, but ultimately we're safe.
Yeah,
we're safe.
Some people say that we're taking different time, we're jumping onto different timelines according to what kind of realities we are creating within ourselves, which makes sense to me in some ways, but it's pretty difficult to wrap your head around it to understand the whole concept. But in that case, and many other spiritual people also say that, well, if this planet is going to raise its vibration, which is probably happening right now or in this period, it's going to be like some are going to join that to accompany that raised vibration, and others are not. And for the others, there's going to be a different world or a different Earth or a different planet or whatever. And we're not really going to interact with those people. So, I mean, this is really far out, but I think you've heard these kinds of reasonings before. Do you see it that way? That's how it's going to happen.
Yeah. Ultimately, I think the only control that we sort of ultimately have is to release control to our intuition or to our God or to our bigger self or to our higher space or whatever's our flavor, whatever your beliefs. All we can do is hand over control to something that's bigger than us, which for me is my intuition, which is where my spirituality lives. And so if that's higher timelines or multiple universes or whatever you want to call it, but I don't think we can bank on this and we can bank on that, and that any power is outside of us. Our horoscope or whatever, it doesn't live there. Even if it does, it has to live inside of us, and we are the horoscope. So that is simply a reflection for us. It doesn't hold power for us. Nothing holds power for us other than us in our own power. And to do that, you have to take the trust fall into releasing control. You have to surrender, and then the intuition takes over. But that's a big trust fall to take, and all of our beliefs can live there. But there's a very different energy. There's a very different foundation between banking on God taking care of me, or horoscopes telling me what to do, or other timelines being an answer, which I'm not. You didn't say that was, but for some people it sort of is, and giving your power to that. Whereas the power of all of that being inside of me, and the suggestion of that being in my trust fall, it's a very different energy. So no one's coming to save us. Nothing's coming to save us. No beliefs are coming to save us, but all of them are.
Yes, and it's all inside us.
Yeah.
And as you said that, I was just checking the clock here, and it was 11:11, and that means something to some people. Those who know, they know. So, a stand in the park, wonderful, beautiful project. How can people find your movement now, and if they want to join?
Legally, I'm not allowed to talk about Stand in the Park. I'm not allowed to access Stand in the Park. I'm not allowed to stand in the park. I'm not allowed to post in Stand in the Park. I cannot comment on Stand in the Park due to the New South Wales Police Force bail conditions. Over to you, Fifi.
Okay.
Is that true? Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. It's insane. So we have a website, standinthepark.org. So you can go there to find all of the stands listed by country and region. We are on social media, so we have a Facebook page. That's just a stand in the park, you'll find. We have various Facebook groups while we can keep going, because obviously the censorship has entered like a whole new realm. But we do have Facebook groups for all countries participating, really. We're on Instagram. We're on Telegram. I can send you the link tree, actually, Anders, which is everything is listed there. The
yes,
website.
yes, and I will put the relevant links in the description.
Yeah, people can find everything under the link tree. There's also interviews that Brady and I have done.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Okay. Sophia, Fifi, and Brady, thank you so much for joining the show, and good luck with this endeavor of yours now.
Thanks,
brother.
Much.
If you like this video and other interviews and talks on Mind the Shift, please like, share, and subscribe. I appreciate all the support. Thank you.